Welcome to Successful Parenting, where we, Jackie Rue and Robin Choquette, share practical skills for families to build resilience and healthy connections. As practicing professionals and parents ourselves, we hope this podcast is a resource for parents to grow, reflect, and learn more about themselves and their children. Our approach is simple, tangible, and most importantly, we lead with compassion for the integrity of the families we serve. This podcast should not be taken as medical advice and is intended for informational purposes only. We love our work, and we can't wait to watch families gain confidence and open themselves up to new ways of successful parenting. Hello, Jackie.
Hi, Robin. How you doing?
I am doing well. Today, I get to go and get my stitches out from my thumb. I am very excited. A little accident with the mandolin last week.
Yeah, what is a mandolin exactly? I know you had said that, and I've heard it. I can't remember. What is it?
It's the slicer where I was slicing onions and you slide it across and it has a blade there. And yeah, I did a little number on my thumb. So I had to go in and they had to get it to stop bleeding. That took a while. I won't get into details. I don't want to make anyone sick, but
I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, it wasn't like horrible that way. It's just been a huge inconvenience and trying to keep it dry, but keeping it clean. And then Tuesday was a day, Jackie. Well, first I bumped the stupid thumb and it's just bleeding, gushing. I'm trying to get out the door. You know how it is. You've got a client. You're trying to get out the door. You like to be early. Well, that starts happening. I grab my coffee. I don't have it in a travel mug. Yes, I spill the entire cup of coffee.
Oh, that sucks when that happens.
It was just, I kept trying to find humor in the day. So that was kind of my day. But no, I think you do that too, is just trying to find humor in those situations, right?
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes we have to learn to laugh at ourselves, right? We have to learn to find gratitude in the small stuff and just laugh at stuff that doesn't go well, because I think it's always going to be some good and some bad, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. But today's a good day. I think, here in Chicago, we have sunny and almost, I think it's like 60 today. So for early February, we're kind of rocking it out over here. So it's nice, seeing a lot of people outside and seeing people, talking and kids playing. And so I'm looking forward to that. We have some great weather. And I'm also really looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too.
This is a topic near and dear to my heart, and one that I talk a lot about with people. I know I've had addiction in my family. There's also been a really big wave of people saying we want to move away from alcohol. We want to move away from addictive behaviors and really focus on being a little bit more present. And so I've gotten several calls, and there's also been several books and podcasts out recently on this topic. So I'm really excited to dive in a little bit with our guest expert today and, just talk more about a subject that is so dear to my heart.
Yes, absolutely. I had a conversation with someone this morning. We were talking about shopping, and they're really trying to stop using that as a coping strategy. And they said, this is really hard. And I said, yeah, you've taken that coping strategy away, and now you have to kind of deal with, the suck that's happening right now. One reason, like you said, Jackie, across the board, everyone's been impacted in some way. I either know someone or someone in their family. Well, today we're going to be joined by EWeber. She is a clinical director at Ellie Services, and she kind of hops around. They have several locations in the Chicagoland area. And as a licensed clinical social worker, Emily is really devoted to her clients and really devoted in helping and recognizing the whole person and meeting them where they are. And this is one of the things I met Emily, I don't even remember how many years ago, but I was always just impressed and loved to hear her talk. You could hear the passion. You could see it the way she approached her work, but she really wanted to know about the other person and really connect to them. She has a great sense of humor, so I'm sure we're going to laugh a little bit today, Jackie, and I am excited. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, guys. How are you? How are you, wonderful ladies, today?
Good. How are you?
Yeah.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. Obviously, also, it's near and dear to my heart because I also experienced growing up in addictive family, and I know how prevalent it is in our clients today. So I'm excited to talking about this topic.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you are very busy.
Well, I will always make time for you guys, both of you. I think what you guys do in the community and the podcast, because I also listen, I value it.
Thank you.
Tell us just a little bit more about yourself and how your passion to help others just has kind of grown, because it seems like it just keeps growing. And you do seem very, very passionate about this topic as well as your work in the field.
Yeah, like Robin said, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I got a certification in drug and alcohol counseling while I was getting my master's, mostly because I realized pretty early on that no matter what kind of client, if you're in the schools, if you're working individually in a hospital system, you're going to run into either somebody or it's going to affect that client. Tried a couple addictions classes and realized this is where I wanted to be. But it's funny, I always tell people when they ask me what led you into the social work career or field, and I'm like, well, I don't know if I chose this field or this field chose me. Because really, I can't imagine doing anything else. And even when I was younger, I always wanted to help people, and it just naturally felt like the right spot. I really enjoy it. I think Jackie's right. I really enjoy working with people, and that's why I continue to do it. Even as a clinical director, I still want to carry a caseload because I know how important it is to work with that client and still be able to do those things that we went to school or started our career doing.
Yeah.
So that kind of keeps me going. Otherwise, if I just did straight administrative stuff or leadership, I think I'd be burnt out. This is what really keeps me not burned out.
Yes. And you are right. I mean, you're so great at that leadership position, and then also wanting to work individually with the client. I can see that. That's a real drive, and the work that you do is just absolutely amazing. Well,
Thanks.
it seems to me that the trend in terms of addiction seems to be higher than it was in previous times. And it just, the likelihood that someone has addiction in their family, things are going on. Can you give us a little information on the trends that you're seeing in addictions and that families are facing?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just the straight statistics, right, post-pandemic, I think it's like 23% of people increased in drinking alcohol and 15 or 16% in just substances and illicit drugs in general, the increase. And through the pandemic, we saw alcohol sales go up by 400%.
Wow.
And so rightfully, when we're isolating, right, what do we tend to want to do? When we have nothing or less to do, we turn to other things, other behaviors. So things that provide dopamine or joy, right? And so that can be substance use. I just read an article about teens and young adults, and they say 2 in 5 young adults or teens have used illicit drugs in the past year. 2 out of 5, that's quite a lot.
Wow.
And 1 out of 3 teens have used THC.
Wow.
So
That's scary.
yes. And I think in the past we hadn't seen as much marijuana use, but I would say when I was still working at the hospital and seeing people come in, that the addiction to marijuana has significantly increased in the last 5 years. And do I think it's due to legalization? No, I think it's been more accessible because of that. So people who might not have been able to seek out marijuana now can. And then, yes, because of all the factors of family history and other co-occurring mental health issues or societal pressure, they have turned, or it's been easier accessible, so that now we see more people even recreationally using it. And then if you have any history, then the chance of potential addiction is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, with the pandemic and the increase of the isolation and increase of mental health, because we are not meant to be as isolated, our social part of us needs that. We turn to wanting to numb or cope with lots of not only substances, but other compulsive behaviors.
Well, and I think what's interesting about what you said too is I think when you think about legalization of marijuana, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's happened is I think with edibles and baked goods and candies and drinks now, I think more and more parents maybe are partaking than before when it wasn't legal. If you think about when vaping first came out, the way they introduced vaping into society was strawberry and blueberry and, it'll help you lose weight. And they really hit the market hard hard with this is like a fun, enjoyable kind of safe thing for you. And now you look at kind of how that vaping epidemic has really taken on in terms of that. And now you see all the edibles and there's even bakeries all over the place now that offer THC products. And what it is there's a big push to detach and relax and have something to help get you through the day. And I think when you think about addiction, that's where it all starts, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and if you look at historically and parents, the THC levels when they were maybe a teen were very little, right? Like 3%. We're talking today substances, through edibles or dispensary and or just buying it or purchasing it through outside of the dispensary. We're looking at 20+% THC, and that really affects our brain development, our motivation, and then other things, right? And so with that being said, right, the higher levels of THC, people are getting more addicted or not understanding the potential for co-occurring mental health. When I was in the hospital, I can't tell you how many times I saw young teens coming in with substance-induced psychosis and from marijuana use, long-term or continued marijuana use. And I know that maybe message or the way people look at marijuana is it's safe, it's a plant, it's safer than alcohol. They'd rather deal with someone who is high on marijuana versus alcohol. But also we don't really know what these higher levels are doing to that developing brain. I mean, we know that it's affecting it, but long-term effects, that's the part that we saw a really significant increase in. And so we have to be aware of that and look at making sure that we're educating. I remember telling my sister this when she said, "Oh, don't drink because your dad's an alcoholic," to my niece. "Marijuana is so much better." And I'm like, but it's not. Don't give that message either. We tend to do that. And so I think you're right, Jackie, with people more partaking, it just becomes more common or accepted within that family system, which is one of those factors that can really increase the potential for not every family that has addiction, everyone will become addicted, but the likelihood is much greater. And so taking that risk can end up in consequence that we're not expecting.
And I think that's a great point too, when you're a child and you kind of see that's a norm, that people have fun. This is what they do when they socialize. Mm-hmm. It seems when addiction is in the home, it's not even always addressed. And I think, or even acknowledged by the family.
Right.
And the behaviors are sometimes excused because if you think about it, if I'm a child who grew up in a home with a lot of drinking, and it's interesting, the individuals may not even think anything of it. It's just what we do and it's what our family's done. Can you give us a little bit of an understanding of what and why this does happen for families, possibly where the behaviors do just kind of get excused or maybe even go unnoticed?
Yeah, there's lots of reasons, right? We have the initial denial. I think this can happen not only with addictions, but mental health, right? Like this isn't going to happen in my house, or this doesn't happen to us, or growing up in it, that's a normal part. We don't know any different. And if we grew up in an addictive family and then our partner drinks, we don't know any different. That's what our childhood looked like. And so we then excuse or we're kind of in denial with enabling behaviors. I see a lot of parents having a lack of awareness of what those signs or symptoms. When I was a kid, right? I hate when I say this, but if I was isolating, we didn't have phones to kind of be able to isolate, right? Like, so if I isolated, my parents were like, "Why are you in your room?" Because I didn't really have a screen or the availability to do whatever I wanted in there. I had to go to the family room to watch TV, or we had a computer, but it was located in our office.
Right.
But today, kids isolate in their rooms where it's not necessarily just a substance abuse behavior. It's just a traditional normal kid. So I think some of that is there's so much cross. It's not as easy to identify as it was maybe when we were younger, because kids can isolate or talk on their phones, or they have accessibility to watch, things in their room that we didn't have. I think also sometimes it's just cultural. If you grow up in a family that's what it is, and all your parties are surrounded by that, it's really hard to make a change because everybody else is doing that. And there's still stigma to it, right? I mean, you look at the stigma of if my child's using or my partner, we struggle feeling alone in that and being able to open up or share. People are, I'd like to say, we're less judgmental or we're more open, but we still aren't. We're still working towards that. And we still run into people who judge us, or we're afraid that they're going to judge us. I mean, they might not even, but we fear that. And so with addiction, we feel like we're dealing with this alone in our family, even though, like I said before, it's much more prevalent than it ever has been. And we tend to try to manage it ourselves. And sometimes we can't manage that. We don't necessarily seek the right resources or, supportive services. A lot of times with addiction, even though we know addiction affects the whole family, a lot of time family systems look like that's that person's problem, even though it's affecting the whole family system. I don't need to get help. They need to get help. And that can create issues where the addictive member or someone who's struggling, they might not be ready to get help. And so then they don't reach out, and then it continues.
Yeah.
A lot of it can be just kind of a perfect storm.
Yeah. What I was thinking as you were saying that, and I'm just thinking as groups of women, so the three of us think about this, everybody's getting together, wine time, they're doing all this, it's all fun, they exchange fun glasses, this and that. But as soon as someone starts to think someone else has a problem, then you can almost see that one person get ostracized, and it's this very shame thing. And they don't always embrace them to talk about it openly, but they flip-flop so quickly and how it happens in families and also groups.
Well, and I think if somebody starts or maybe wants to quit alcohol, right? If they're questioning their relationship with it, right? They feel like they're using it too much. They're not liking how they feel the next day. When that approaches in a social situation, meaning in a group of friends, it makes the other friends start to think like, wait, I drink as much as they do, or I drink more than they do, or we start looking at ourselves. And I think that's where we start to pull back, because if we're not ready to address it or somebody else is addressing it, and especially for women, we're constantly worrying we're not doing enough or we're not keeping up with everybody, so am I doing the right parenting things? Am I doing the right thing socially? Am I doing enough here or enough there? We then start questioning, well, if they have a problem, do I have a problem? And it could be, somebody who drinks just occasionally and not have a problem, but we still then internalize it. Well, what does that mean for me?
Mm-hmm.
And then that can create that uncomfortable or shame. And if we are not ready to, we then start questioning, like, is this something I should do for my health? I had a friend who gave up alcohol because she didn't like the parent she was the next day. She was crabby. And so when she said that to some of her friends, we start thinking, well, am I a bad parent? Should I give this up? And so then that makes us feel judged if we don't, right? Or we question it, or we feel, how's that other person going to feel around us, right? And we don't want to make anybody else uncomfortable. So then we can't sometimes have that normal conversation. And I think it's really important to do that, to be able to have those open conversations with our friends, because then they can know that we are supportive of those choices and not feeling so isolated.
Yeah. Well, what suggestions, talking about, discussing it openly, any suggestions about talking to a child if there's addictions in the home and it needs to be addressed? What would you suggest?
Yeah, this is a question I get a lot. How to tell, or how much to tell my child, or how to incorporate them into services if a parent is getting help through therapy. One, it's age appropriate. They're exposed to things so much earlier today, right? With the accessibility of phones, the internet. So they know things much earlier than we did. So age appropriate is always the most important, but a lot of times kids are more aware than we would like them to, and sheltering them doesn't help the situation. I always try to talk about being honest and somewhat transparent, making sure that they understand what is happening. If the parent is seeking help, to not necessarily lie or make things up. I mean, if they're little, yes, going to the doctor is a fine thing. But if they're 8, 9, 10, they're much more aware. They know these behaviors. They know why their parents are crabby. They know that they're drinking alcohol. They understand that. And so being direct and honest, they're more likely to hear what you're saying. And I think being open, allowing a kid to ask questions, regardless of if you're talking about addiction in the family or if you're trying to see what your kid knows about substances, and having those conversations early because they're exposed to it early through social media, friends, but being open and allowing them to ask those questions instead of seeking out answers to those, through friends or the internet, because you want to give them true facts versus what they're going to hear from a peer, right? So being able to, and I think this is the key, I talk about this with most parents of kids anyway, with mental health or substance, allowing them to have like an open forum and allowing the kid to tell them as much as they're willing to tell without being judgmental or shaming tones, they're more likely to share or ask or be willing to talk about it if they don't feel like they're going to get in trouble. Doesn't mean that you can't have expectations or talk about it, but allowing them to have that open space is really the most important. Like I said, we want to make sure that the kids are getting the true facts because there's so much inaccuracies out there, and things like TikTok or other YouTube, a lot of it is opinion based, right? And so then that's what they're getting, not necessarily true information or education.
Absolutely. That is so true.
Yeah, we've talked about, there's so many different family members and extended family members. And, sometimes children are exposed to like intoxication or different things or, having to hear about things. So there's something to be said for that too. And how do parents navigate that? What would you advise for parents on how to have those conversations or where to get support?
That's an interesting question because I think back for me when I was a kid too, looking at who I could talk to. And my mom and dad did a great job because my aunt was a great support and they trusted. If I didn't want to talk to my parents about something, like having that adult and trusting that I could go to her and have real transparent conversations. If it's dealing with having your kid having a support or yourself, right? Looking at who those kind of that interpersonal relationship circles, who are in that, who supports you the most, who aligns with some of your values. And those are the people that I would encourage you to go to. And then if you're looking outside, seeking professional help. Therapy is, my feeling on therapy, everyone should be in therapy. I'm even in therapy, right? So, every good therapist has their own therapist.
Right.
And so, looking at seeking that, especially if you're the support person and dealing with that, sometimes getting your own help and be able to set boundaries and understand the enabling behaviors that we do within family systems. Meaning, if I just don't do this, this is going to happen, right? Like if I can just watch this person at all times or be there for it, they're not going to drink or they're not going to use, which we know isn't the case. But being able to get that support person support and set boundaries sometimes is enough to get that person into a treatment or into a therapist or to get help. There's support groups, Families Anonymous and Al-Anon and Codependence. And so there are support groups that people can seek support and reassurance and understanding of what other people have dealt with and not feel so alone.
Yeah.
It's no one perfect solution. I wish there was, because not every person is ready for this or that, but it's trying to figure out what that toolbox is, right? What's going to work for you and trying those at least once or twice, because going to a meeting, you might be like, I don't really want to, but you meet a good core group of people who can support you and understand you. And that's going to be beneficial versus maybe individual therapy where you're only getting that one-on-one connection.
Well, and I think this is just so much good information too. Talked a lot about, in homes, we're all going to be impacted by drinking in some way. Maybe, as adults, we grew up in homes where, addiction was present and in some way that impacted us, possibly even in ways we don't understand as we look at our own relationship with addiction. And sometimes people are addicted to different things. You might start off addicted to one thing and then it might go to another. And that's why I think, for parents, when they notice any type of addictive behavior in their children, it might just say, well, it's just video games or it's just this or it's just that. But a lot of times addictive behaviors start with something smaller. I know they used to use the term gateway drug, but really, you might start as a child being addicted to tech or video games. And then what happens is through just brain and everything else, you start to get that addictive mentality where you need that rush, you need that fix, you need that, across the board, for families. It might not be something that seems overly concerning in the moment, but when you notice severely, addictive patterns, that might be something to watch out for. Any suggestions for families, as I know we're coming to a close, any suggestions that you would have for families on just monitoring and just seeking any advice?
What you brought up is spot on. It can start with just addictive behaviors towards video games and not wanting to get off of it. And it's that dopamine rush that they're getting every time they're playing a game, right? We get dopamine, and that is the drug. It makes us happy. We enjoy it. And when we get dopamine rushes, we want more and more. And that's the same thing that happens in alcohol or other addictions. But being mindful that we see online gambling. I want to get into the market and I want to look at the stock exchange, but that's the initial starting of gambling. And, we see young teens, and we're talking about preteens, already addicted to porn, relationships, all sorts of things. And so being mindful of some of those behaviors and what your kids are doing on their devices, because that can lead to all of these other things. And so just monitoring and remind yourself that you can check their phones. You can have accessibility. These are opportunities, having these devices, not rights, and monitoring them and making sure that you're looking out for some of those behaviors, especially if you have a 8-9-year-old who's already addicted to video games and they can't get off, or Netflix, and they're screaming and yelling and they think you're the worst parent ever. Starting to limit that stuff earlier on, because trying to change a behavior at 16 is a lot harder than someone at 7. The 16-year-old at that point, they might be as big as you and their attitudes are bigger than you. And so it's a lot easier to deal with a 7 or 8-year-old who's telling you you're the worst parent than a 16-year-old who is going to tell you the same thing, but it's harder to break all those conditioned behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to be mindful early on those things, on what kids are exposed to and what they're doing, because we don't know what it's going to be like in the future with all of this. I'm not going to lie. I look at Reels and TikTok and get lost in the TikTok scroll. But that's because that dopamine, right? Like that 3-minute rush. What is that long-term effect on our brains and the kids' developing brains? We're seeing some of that addictive behaviors, but long-term, I think we're going to see a lot more adults with substance abuse problems because they're going to be seeking that dopamine more and more and more, right?
Mm-hmm. So true. Yeah, mine is the voiceover for animals. There's a guy called Rockstar on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just watch that and I'm laughing out loud. So, nope, I get it.
Mine are like 3 things. They're like cat videos, and cat videos. I guess maybe they're all cat videos. Maybe I should not have said that, but yes. I mean, I love the animal videos, right? And so they make me laugh, and the algorithm so just keeps feeding me.
Yes.
So, I mean, think about that, at 41, and I know the traps, but at 12, we don't realize those traps.
Mm-hmm. So true. Well, Emily, we are to the end where we ask you the 3 questions. I'm going to read those off and you can answer 1, 2, or all 3 of the questions. It's up to you, whatever you want to do. Number 1, what did you do as a child or teenager that would drive your parents crazy? I really want to hear this one. Number 2, what is the biggest difference between children and teenagers today and when you grew up? And then number 3, what does successful parenting mean to you? Take it away, 1, 2, or all 3, whatever you want to do.
This is funny. The one thing that annoyed my parents the most is I thanked my parents for everything. Like I was a thank you for dinner, thank you for this, even just overly obnoxious about it. And which sounds pretty, like most parents would be like, that's so nice, but you can take it to an extreme. And so my siblings, it really, I think, bothered my siblings more because I do that. I talk about this all the time. What's the difference between being a kid today versus a kid when I was? The 2 things that strike out the most is we would go to our friends for a lot of our support. And today kids, they can't go to their friends for as much support. They go to their parents. And as parents of these teens, we think they are looking for solutions. And so I think that's a big difference is I didn't go to my parents for validation. I went to my friends, where kids today are going to parents for validation. And so I'm being mindful of that. It's what your kid might need, not solutions. Mm-hmm. Successful parenting is about making decisions that you think is right and hoping that the outcome is the one desired.
Okay.
And if it's not, it doesn't mean it was a wrong. It was just the right one at the moment. And so just being mindful that there's no right or wrong thing necessarily of parenting. Mm-hmm. It's just trying to be a good parent.
Yeah, I like that.
And be present.
I do. I like it. Thank you so much, Emily. We really love our conversation.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. And I appreciate everything that you 2 do because I value your podcasts and your books. And I know that you're one of the things that I like to recommend to my clients' parents.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think you guys do a great job. So thank you again. And Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yes.
You too. Have a great day. Enjoy some sunshine. I know you're getting it too.
I know. I love it.
Awesome. Okay. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye, Jackie.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us, and make sure to subscribe and like us to catch our next episode, where we will take you on a journey to find new ways of successful parenting.